My name is Freja Clark, and I'm turning 60 this year. Although I'm technically retired, I'm fortunate enough to still be working. But it's not the typical 9 to 5 grind. I only go into the office occasionally and attend meetings. Nowadays, most meetings are held remotely, so I work from home most of the time. My oldest son seems to have the mistaken belief that I've completely stopped working. I became a widow in my 39s, and now I live with my oldest son and his wife. Our family home is an old but spacious property, and despite its flaws, I've always loved it. That's why moving out was so hard for me. Financially, I've never faced any real difficulties. Most of the life insurance money from my late husband remains untouched, ensuring I don't have to worry about my twilight years. However, despite leading what seems like a carefree life, I do have some worries. The biggest of them is my daughter-in-law, Ellen. She's got a strong-willed personality, and we often clash. This isn't a recent development. It started the moment she announced their engagement. I'll never forget the outfit she wore when she first came to introduce herself. She showed up in a tracksuit that looked like something she wore in high school. She claimed she wanted me to see her as she truly was, without any pretenses, but from my perspective, it was completely inappropriate. While calling it a crafty excuse might be too harsh, she definitely has a knack for arguing, and she's incredibly articulate, which makes things difficult. I couldn't understand why my son chose her as his partner. Later, I found out that Ellen was the one who pursued him. She may be bold, but she's undeniably beautiful, and I think my sheltered, somewhat naive son was captivated by her. Even after they decided to marry, her behavior didn't change. To put it kindly, Ellen isn't one to put on airs. To put it bluntly, she seems to lack common sense in her actions. I wanted to oppose their marriage, but I told myself it was my son's choice, and I tried to be patient. The result is the situation we're in now. After they got married, my son didn't want to leave me alone in the family home, so he insisted that we all live together. I expected Ellen to oppose the idea, but surprisingly, she was in favor of it.
I soon realized why.
After we moved in together, Ellen hardly lifted a finger around the house. Cleaning, laundry, cooking, she left it all to me, despite being a full-time housewife. She quit her job as soon as they got married, and even though I don't go to the office every day, I work remotely, which means I have less free time than she does. While I'm working at my computer, Ellen would make snide comments, dismissing my efforts as just playing around. I used to laugh it off, not wanting to argue over every little thing, but it started to get under my skin. One day, I couldn't take it anymore. "Ellen, you seem to have plenty of free time. Could you help out with the cleaning?" I asked as she lounged on the couch, watching a TV drama. She shot me a look of pure disgust, let out a dramatic sigh, and replied, "The reason I don't do housework is for your benefit, Mother. Why don't you understand? It's sad that you can't appreciate my thoughtfulness." She then went on to explain her absurd theory. If she did the housework, it would take away the only task I had, leaving me idle, which she claimed was unhealthy for someone my age. According to her, staying active by doing chores prevents seniors from becoming sedentary, which she said could lead to dementia due to a lack of stimulation. In other words, Ellen believed she was doing me a favor by leaving all the housework to me. Her ridiculous reasoning almost gave me a headache. "I agreed to live together to make sure you don't slack off, Mother," she added with a half-smile, leaving me speechless and deeply regretting my decision to live under the same roof. Every day, I regret that I didn't choose to live separately. If I had, I could have avoided seeing things I didn't want to see. Doing housework under Ellen's watchful eye every day is pure torment. Reaching my breaking point, I decided to have a conversation with my eldest son. I wasn't planning to complain about Ellen. Instead, I decided it was time to move into an apartment where I could live on my own. The house we were living in was old, with uneven floors and lots of stairs. Last year, I hurt my back, and with my age and health declining, the house became increasingly difficult for me to navigate. So, I explained to my son how hard it was for me to live there, and I moved into an apartment. Even though it felt like Ellen had driven me out, I didn't regret leaving. My new apartment is a rental, and while I initially thought it might be too big for one person, I chose a place large enough for my grandchildren to stay over in the future. I had the interior customized to my liking, and it felt like I had finally created my own little sanctuary. But my joy didn't last long, as Ellen started coming over every day, staying until late into the night. "This new apartment is really nice, isn't it, Mother? Don't you think it's too big for just you?" Ellen said one day, lounging on my living room couch. "Come on, Mother. Come back to the old house and do the house chores. It's for your health and longevity." I couldn't believe my ears. Ellen was telling me to return to the old house to take care of the chores. Her self-centered attitude was overwhelming, and it made my head spin. "I've already moved out of that house, Ellen. It's time for you to step up as the wife. I handle all the chores here, and my health checkups are always good. There's nothing for you to worry about." Ellen turned her head away, completely ignoring my words. She had a habit of disregarding anything she didn't want to hear. That was her usual tactic. Despite my attempts to set boundaries, Ellen continued to come over to my apartment daily. Just the other day, she even stayed the night, claiming it was too much trouble to go back home. My parents' home and this apartment are only about a 15-minute walk apart. My eldest son had suggested I live close to my parents' home because he was worried about me. His concern made me a little sad about leaving the house. One day, after returning home from a rare work-related outing, I was shocked to find Ellen inside my apartment. She had let herself in using the spare key I had given my son, without even telling me. Welcome back," she said, lying on the floor in front of the TV, not even bothering to get up. "Ellen, that spare key is meant for emergencies, not for you to let yourself in whenever you please," I replied, feeling uneasy about her being in my apartment while I was away. For the first time, I spoke to her firmly. She seemed taken aback, as she wasn't used to me being so assertive. She shot me an annoyed look, but I stared right back at her. "You're really a stingy mother-in-law. I can't stand that about you," Ellen began to yell. "I can't stand anything about you, even this apartment. We're a family, so you should leave." With that, she tried to push me out the front door. It seemed she couldn't bear the thought of me living in this apartment. She was upset that they were stuck in the old house while I was living here, claiming it was unfair. "The rent for this place is being paid by James, isn't it? It wouldn't be strange for us, his family, to live here. That's what living beyond your means means." It became clear that Ellen thought my son was paying for the apartment. That explained why she was always showing up uninvited. In her mind, this apartment should have been a place for her family to live. "All right, I will leave," I said. I stared her down and responded, "All right, I'll move my things out within 3 days." Ellen, clearly suspicious, demanded I call a moving company right in front of her. Without hesitation, I pulled out my smartphone, contacted a moving service, and scheduled them to come in 2 days. Satisfied, she finally left. As I watched her walk away, I began to form a plan. As promised, I moved out, relocating to a senior-friendly apartment. I decided to give it a try for 2 weeks. I handed over the keys and lease documents to Ellen, instructing her to get the contract changed through the real estate agent. Thankfully, I'd known the landlord for years, and they were flexible with the arrangements, which was a huge relief. My eldest son was furious with Ellen for pushing me out, and he even started considering divorce. But Ellen didn't seem to care at all. In fact, she took it a step further by moving into my apartment, saying, "Well then, let's live separately." I could only marvel at how bold and shameless she was. However, in 5 days, Ellen would face the reality of her actions. While I was working remotely one day, my phone began ringing incessantly. It was Ellen, just as I had anticipated. I had a recorder ready, so I pressed the record button before answering the call. "Excuse me, Mother. What's going on with the rent for this apartment? Why am I the one who has to pay it? This isn't right." Ellen was ranting as soon as I picked up, and I could tell she was flustered. "Oh, but Ellen, aren't you the current leaseholder? It only makes sense that you should pay the rent. Is there a problem?" I replied in a calm and leisurely tone, intentionally trying to annoy her further. Ellen, already agitated, became even more flustered. "But didn't James used to pay the rent here? We're not even divorced yet, so shouldn't James still be responsible for it?" When Ellen had brought up the rent issue to my son, He told her that I knew the truth and suggested she call me. The reality was that my son had never paid the rent for the apartment. In fact, I had been secretly helping him out financially because of Ellen's extravagant spending habits. Ellen, you've misunderstood. I was the one paying the rent for that apartment all along. James didn't contribute a dime. I clarified, enjoying the moment. Ellen, who had been excited about living separately in the new apartment, seemed completely shocked. She quickly hung up after muttering a few words. Immediately afterward, I contacted my son and played back the recorded conversation for him. I've put up with this for a long time, but I've reached my limit. You feel the same, don't you? I said to him, aware that he was exhausted from dealing with the debts Ellen had accumulated. Despite how grown-up my son was as a parent, I couldn't help but lend a hand. Some might say I was too soft, but I believed it was natural for a parent to step in. My son replied quietly, I'll divorce her. I'm tired, too.
Good.
Then follow my instructions, I told him, laying out my plan. I first asked him to take 3 days of paid leave, starting immediately. I instructed him to quietly move out his important belongings without Ellen noticing. We didn't want her spotting any large trucks, so the move had to be discreet, especially since she might be lurking nearby. I advised him to gradually move things out during the night. The new location for his belongings was a single-family home I had found, where Ellen wouldn't be able to track them down. The plan was progressing smoothly and secretly. 3 days later, I received another call from Ellen. This time, she was even more panicked than before. What's got you so worked up? I asked, maintaining my deliberately relaxed tone. Ellen was clearly distressed, almost on the verge of panic. Mother, our house is up for sale, and my parents called to say that my belongings have been delivered to their house. What's going on? It seemed that my son had followed my instructions perfectly. He had sent all of Ellen's belongings to her parents' home and put their house up for sale, leaving it empty. The landlord told me that if I can't pay the rent, I should move out. I thought I'd talk to James about it, but when I got home, there were chains and a padlock on the gate. And I couldn't get in. There's even a for sale sign up. Ellen's voice was almost hysterical. She must have been in total shock when she arrived home. I've already signed a formal sales contract with the realtor. That house is no longer accessible to us, I said calmly. Ellen, there are a few things I need to clear up, I continued, ready to finally release all the stress I had been holding in. First, I'm no longer your mother-in-law, right? Yesterday, James filed for divorce. You signed the papers, didn't you? So now you and I are strangers. The day before, my eldest son had submitted the divorce papers to the city office. Ellen had signed those papers a long time ago, as she had a habit of threatening divorce whenever things didn't go her way. My son once told me that he had hoped Ellen would eventually change, that she would become the person he loved enough to marry. But it seems my son finally woke up. He signed the very divorce papers she used as a weapon, and he submitted them. The divorce was now official. You always told James that you could divorce him anytime. Well, now things have gone exactly as you wanted, haven't they, Ellen? I said, sensing her holding her breath on the other end of the line. She wanted to argue back, but she couldn't find the words. I could feel her frustration. And another thing, Ellen, I continued. I'm worried about you. After the divorce, how do you plan to keep living in that apartment without a job? Moving costs money too. How are you going to manage all of this? Ellen didn't bother hiding her anger anymore. She yelled and cursed at me, revealing her true feelings. She admitted that she had married my son because she believed my late husband left a large inheritance. But what she didn't realize was that I controlled that inheritance, and she couldn't touch a single penny of it. Her plan to pay off her debts by marrying my son had completely backfired. Of course, I let my son listen to this conversation as well. If it came to a divorce settlement, I planned to use the recording as evidence. I waited patiently for Ellen to finish her tirade, which lasted a good 15 minutes. Finally, her tone changed, and she began to plead with me, crying, I'm sorry.
I've been disowned by my family.
I have nowhere to go. Please help me. She confessed that her parents had cut ties with her because of her reckless spending and borrowing habits. She had caused them so much trouble that they disowned her. As she begged, I couldn't help but remember a sense of unease I felt at her wedding. It all made sense now. This was what felt off. Ellen, now with nowhere to go, was truly alone. I felt a pang of sympathy, but I knew this was the consequence of her own actions. Apologizing now won't change anything. We're strangers now, Ellen. There's nothing more to discuss. Good luck with your life, I said, and with that, I ended the call. After our conversation, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. But that wasn't the end of Ellen's troubles. My son told me that Ellen had shown up at his workplace, causing such a commotion that they had to call the police. Apparently, while she was out, the landlord had changed the locks on the apartment because she hadn't paid rent, leaving her unable to get back in. She probably tried to reach out to me or my son, but we had already canceled our old cell phones and switched to new ones with different numbers. We didn't give her our new address either, so she couldn't contact us even if she tried. After causing a scene at my son's company, Ellen was issued a restraining order. With nowhere else to turn, it seems she tried to go back to her parents. But when she arrived at their home, she was met with a harsh reality. The luggage I had sent to her parents' house was left out in the rain, abandoned in the backyard. She wasn't even allowed to set foot inside. To make matters worse, her parents had received the bill for the unpaid rent on the apartment, which only added to their anger. I heard rumors that she's now staying in an apartment provided by an organization that supports homeless individuals. Without the ability to spend as she once did, she's clearly under a lot of stress. I was stunned when I saw her on the street one day. Her once vibrant hair had turned almost completely white, and her skin looked dry and tired. She had changed so much that I barely recognized her. I hardly recognized her at first. It really struck me how much a change in living conditions can transform a person. The contrast was stark and unsettling. As for me, I've started a new chapter in the house I purchased using my late husband's inheritance. I decided on a duplex, so my son can have the option to remarry and still have his own space whenever he's ready. For now, he joins me for dinner, but otherwise, he handles his own affairs. I've come to realize that this setup, being close but not too close, is just the right balance for us. The money from the sale of my parents' home is safely set aside for future needs. I plan to use it to support my son and his future wife when they marry. Of course, I'm also keeping some of it for any grandchildren that might come along. In this new home, I'm finally able to focus on something I've always dreamed of: creating an English garden. On days when I'm not working, I spend time in the garden, tending to the young trees and herbs. This new life, filled with hope and the promise of growth, has become my daily routine.